Good evening and welcome to the 5th episode of CodeBytes. Today we're going to be looking a little bit more at functions, but the episode is actually titled Parameters. Now, parameters are something that we use to pass information to a function. This allows us to build up that complex program logic so that we can pass variables essentially into the function and then use that information for whatever we want to do. So what we're going to do first is just create a new empty Python file. And I'm just going to save this as parameters inside of our teaching folder, tutorials, Python, CodeBytes, and let's save this as parameters. There we are. So what we're going to do first is we're going to just think about defining a new function, and the way that we do that is using that def keyword. So let's say define a new function to add two numbers together and print their result. Okay, so once again I'm going to use that def keyword. I'm going to say define new function called add, and we've seen this before. And this will allow me to just add two things together, this function will, whenever I call it. However, I need to know what I'm going to be adding together, and the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to pass something in that's called a parameter. And the parameters that I'm going to pass in to add is just two parameters, an x and a y. And by doing that, I have given my code a way of having information passed from one place to another. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say let's print out the value of x plus y. Once we've got that, I'm just going to save it and hit F5 for it to run. And there you go, you can see nothing's actually happened because I haven't yet called my function. So let's just put a comment in here. Let's say print out the addition of our parameters. So there we are, we've got a very simple function, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to say call the add function, passing it in to parameters. And I'm going to do that by saying add, and what I'm going to actually pass is, instead of passing x and y like that, is I'm going to replace x and y with two numbers. So in this case, let's replace it with a 1 and a 7. And close my brackets, save that, and run it. And you can see here, I've actually printed the value of 8. Well, let's see what's actually going on here. So I'm going to actually print, rather than going through with a full explanation of this, I'm actually going to just print some extra output so you can see exactly what is going on. So I'm going to say print the value of x. I'm just going to say print, and say your value of x is. And remember types, I can't actually print an integer, so what I'll have to do is convert our integer that we've passed in of x, because you can see here, when I pass x in, I'm actually passing a type of integer. If I was doing that, I would be passing a type of string, but it's an integer, and we're unable to call the print function on an integer, so we have to first casting's a way of changing the type of something. We have to cast the type to a type of string. And there we are, we're now printing the value of x, and I'm going to say as well print your value of y is. I'm going to print out the value of y, convert it to a string, and run that. And you can see here, our value of x is 1. Well, that's because I've passed 1 in as the first parameter, meaning that x was assigned a value of 1. So essentially what I've done there is I've actually said x equals 1. Okay? And again, I've passed in my second variable, 7, which has been assigned to the value of y. And you can see when we print out y, it prints the value of 7. Then we add both of them together, and we get the value of 8, because 1 plus 7 is 8, and I can change this to a 3. Let's test it as that. And you'll see the value of x is now 3, because x is assigned this 3, and y is assigned the 7. And I could call the add function again in the code. I could say add for 5, and see that what the result of that is. And the result of that is going to be x is set to a value of 4 this time, y is set to a value of 5, and the addition of those two numbers is 9. So parameters are a really, really useful way of actually being able to build up that complex program logic and start passing information from one place to another. We'll take a deeper look at this in future weeks, for example, maybe even passing more complex parameters. What I'll actually do now though is I'll just show you a little error message, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass an extra parameter into the add function, and when I run this, let's see what goes on. So here we have an error, and it says type error, add takes exactly 2 arguments, 3 given. Another way of calling a parameter is an argument, so that's what I think Python actually calls them, but the general sort of programming term for them is a parameter. And you can see here we've passed 3 parameters into a function that only requires 2, and that has thrown an error for us. We're unable to do this. So the code knows how many parameters need to be passed, and it will stop you from passing any more than that. I hope that this has been a good tutorial. I hope you've learned something from it, and we'll just take a bit of a deeper look at this in coming weeks. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time for CodeBytes.